June 23rd, 2001. The day the Sonic fandom would unanimously rally behind a single game and sing its praises even to this day. Sonic Adventure 2 is the sequel to the game that pushed Sonic into the 3D space, Sonic Adventure. Everyone I know seems to think this game is the pinnacle of Sonic and all that the franchise should be today. And obviously, since I've always been one to follow the crowd, I should share that notion, right? That's where you're wrong. I don't think this game is terrible, but do I think it's good? There's no simple way to put it, so I might be here for a while. Strap yourselves in, because today I'm going to be deciding. Sonic Adventure 2, good or bad? I'm going to be breaking this game down into 3 distinct pieces when it comes to gameplay. Speed, treasure hunting, and mech stages, as those are the different level styles you'll encounter throughout the game. Gotta keep it simple and familiar, you know? Anyway, the first section we'll be covering is speed. Speed stages are where this game shines the brightest in my opinion. Anytime people revisit this game just to play a level, it's usually these types that they default to. However, as fun as they may be to some, it's my duty to speak my truth. This game is far too wonky to have levels like this. I won't say that the game is rushed in terms of controls because it actually controls pretty nicely. In the hub worlds anyway. Shell Garden, stuff like that. But when it comes to actual levels that are going to require maintaining speed and traversing through the levels in the game, it honestly feels way too slippery and broken to me. The problems I had with Sonic Unleashed having mere split seconds for reaction aren't really present here. Not in the same manner anyway. You can call it a skill issue, but I should be able to completely cancel my momentum in a 3D space, especially in a game like this. Going down a ramp that leads to a possible death trap and having to control this slippery is not good level design unless you have the proper control to manage it, which I believe this game doesn't. People have mastered this game's controls, which I admire, don't get me wrong, but as a casual player I shouldn't have to master the controls just to complete the second speed stage in a reasonable amount of time. That and the lightspeed dash in these games is possibly the worst mechanic ever conceived in this franchise. But I can't only talk bad about it, right? It seemed like I was just biased against it. Something I admire about this game's level design for the speed stages is the many different pathways you could take in order to reach the goal. Something present in the 2D era games that translates beautifully here. That's one thing I wish had stuck around to Unleashed, which it kinda did, I would say. The replayability of this stages is something simply not present in the series outside of Mania and Superstars, which is somewhat of a missed opportunity on Sega's side. To say this game has bad level design would be a blatant lie on my part, but I don't think that the controls are properly optimized to play through the levels properly. Look at the Sonic Generations mods porting Sonic Adventure 2 levels into that game. In my opinion, it feels far better and smoother to race through than in the original game. Again, that's just my opinion. You're free to disagree with me if you want. Now when it comes to boss fights, it's sadly not great. Half of them don't even have unique mechanics, and those that do are few and far between. I can say, however, that I did enjoy the second Sonic and Shadow encounter, as well as the first Bio-Lizard fight. That's about all I have to say on that though. Now, onto the treasure hunting stages. They don't control as bad. Not to say that the controls don't feel wonky at times, but since speed isn't the main objective, I can excuse it here. At least it doesn't feel as slippery as Shadow the Hedgehog did. Still, these stages like the speed stages aren't without fault. The radar for the Master Emerald shards are usually off by a lot, and the stages are very easy to get lost in. If that was the intent, then bravo, you did it. But if not, it's not looking good for you there, Sonic Team. These stages are still pretty fun to play nonetheless. I just wish they'd utilize Knuckles' character traits a bit more, like his incredible strength for example, but I understand why they chose not to, as the levels were designed with Rouge in mind as far as I can tell. Still, a bit more combat in these stages wouldn't hurt. The boss fights for the treasure hunters aren't anything super special, though I do admire the creativity of those on the team when concepting these designs. Very nicely done and something I miss in the modern games. Not a whole lot I can criticize in these stages, but there isn't a whole lot I can praise either, so I guess my harshest criticism would be the lack of variety, or at least how forgettable the stages are beyond their music. The mech stages suffer from the same issues I pointed out in the last part of the treasure hunter section. Half these stages are just plain forgettable. However, the controls are actually pretty nice here. The weight of the characters feels exactly as it should, and I never really felt like it controlled super badly. So I guess my only gripe with these stages is that they feel repetitive. Not a lot of branching pathways, and it's mostly just go there and shoot this. Lack of variety is not this playstyle's friend. but the power fantasy you get from being able to one-shot practically every enemy you encounter isn't half bad. So I can't complain about the combat. There's room for improvement, but if this game released today, then I probably wouldn't complain about these sections at all. Now that we have the core gameplay out of the way, we can dig into the meat and potatoes. My harshest criticisms are out of the way, is what I'd want you to think. If you follow me on Twitter at all, you'd know about my adamant disdain for this game in particular, and it's not just because of one thing, but because of a majority of factors. The story leaping all over the place, the hero and dark story rival fight outcomes never being canonized, Shadow the Hedgehog in general, put on top of the things that I previously mentioned. I'm not saying the game is bad, but I really do not like it all that much. Sorry to anybody who thought I'd be following the crowd on this one. Anyway, Shadow the Hedgehog. Why do I think he's one of the low points of this game, you may ask? And I ask you, when did I ever say that dumb shit? Shadow is one of my favorite parts of this game because he was written too well. In fact, this game is one of the reasons he's my favorite character in the franchise. It's what they did with him after this game that bothers me. He sacrificed himself at the end of this game for a reason. The completion of his character arc, and what should have been the completion of his character as a whole, was turned into a, oh yeah, that happened moment. All because they wanted to bring him back because fans liked him as a character. I wouldn't have minded this if he didn't die, but the entire point of him being present at the final boss was to perish and atone for the things he had done over the course of the game. So to bring him back in the very next game steps on everything they had tried to accomplish by killing him off in the first place. Not to say that heroes didn't do interesting things with this character, I actually quite enjoyed the direction they took with him. Although the Shadow Android's plot twist led to some mass confusion later on down the line, his amnesia was left open at the end of the game, which led into Shadow the Hedgehog in 2005, which I enjoyed. I liked the continuity of that. But that game does a lot of things wrong, and even in some instances misrepresented the character as a cold and heartless person, rather than the stoic and driven person he really is. Sonic 06 is the last time he was really written properly, and it saddened me. I enjoyed his character during this era, and I would have preferred he remain untarnished. And honestly, that wouldn't have happened if he hadn't been brought back in the first place. But that's enough of that tangent. Back to what I said about the story jumping all over the place. It's tough to lay down a timeline of events in this game when it tries to give you dates and times and locations. And honestly, that's probably a nothing issue, and honestly something I experienced through my playthrough, and I can't say that's the same for everybody. I just had a hard time keeping track of it. I had to go through YouTube and find cutscenes in order just to experience the story and really get everything, absorb it all, stuff like that. I just guess I prefer if it was more linear and if you played the stages in chronological order. But I still believe this game has one of, if not the best story in franchise history.
So I want to start my portion of this video by first saying thank you to Jotef for having me on. I really appreciate doing a collab video in a sense, and it's been a long time coming. I'm a big fan of the videos that you've put out, and I just want to start off by saying once again thank you for having me on. Now, as for my opinion of Sonic Adventure 2, I am a die-hard fan of this game. This is in probably my top 3 Sonic games ever. A lot of that is due to nostalgia and how much I played this game growing up. I absolutely loved it. I have nothing but good and some frustrating memories with this game, but overall, I wouldn't change my experience with it for anything, and I really enjoy the game. Now, I want to say pretty much all of Jotep's points are 100% correct. The game is very glitchy, the controls don't hold up that well in the modern day, and the game really hasn't aged all that well. But with this game, I would just like to point out, in my opinion, this game came out a long time ago, right? We all know this game has come out a long time ago, and this was a new thing for Sonic at the time. The transition into 3D was very rough. We had games like Sonic 3D Blast, and that didn't go over well. And then we got a proper 3D introduction with Sonic Adventure 1, which that game, for as much as I love that one as well, it's pretty rough around the edges too. So obviously the game hasn't aged well at all, but I think the things that are fun in this game are really fun. I love the speed stages in this game. I think they are some of the best modern-ish Sonic gameplay that we've had up until recent years with Sonic Frontiers. I think the level exploration is rewarding. I like hunting down all of the golden bots in every level. I like that the stage has 5 levels. I think it adds to the replayability of the game. And again, the gameplay is very glitchy. There are times where you will straight up just fall through walls and fall through floors and you don't know how you die. There are other points where you'll get a power up and it just won't count for you. There are several glitches in these games, but I think Sega knew going in, while it was a rush product, they focused on what Sonic fans wanted. So the speed sections had to be highlights, with the gun truck or rushing through the jungle while you're racing against time before the island blows up. The stakes are the highest that they've ever been, in my opinion, and I think that adds to the gameplay because you feel the race against the time. You have to get off the island before it blows up. You have to beat Shadow in this race. So I think the hero side has done really well with the race against the clock that they've added to the story. Now, as for the dark side, it is very, very interesting in my opinion. And I think that's what differs the two sides of the stories. On one hand, you got this race against the clock, and on the other hand, you have this dark character, Shadow the Hedgehog, but something happened and you want to understand why he is the way that he is. And the game gives you a great story, which Jotep already touched on, for Shadow the Hedgehog. And overall, I think the game is still very fun. I know there's some issues with it. I still love the mech missions for the most part, and I think the treasure hunting missions are pretty fun too. And of course, I gotta talk about the two-player in the game. The two-player is so fun. The battle modes that you can get into and being able to use chaos abilities in them, I think it all adds up to a really great time. So in my personal opinion, I can see why people love this game, and I can also see why people don't love this game because it hasn't aged all that well. But those are my quick summed up thoughts on the game. I appreciate Jotep for having me on here and letting me give a diehards fan perspective. So thank you so much again, Jotep, and you guys be sure to subscribe to my boy because he puts out great content like this. And I will see you guys next time.
So, in finale, while Sonic Adventure 2 has some major downsides to it, I wouldn't say this is the worst game I've ever played. Far from it, really. I can see why people like this game so much, and I honestly can't blame them for fighting tooth and nail to defend it. But I can't say it's my cup of tea. The game really shows its age playing it today, and if a remaster were ever released, I'd have to pick it up and see how it feels compared to the original. Now, on to the final consensus I mentioned in the beginning. If I had to choose one or the other, well, I don't particularly like this game, we're looking at it objectively. So, Sonic Adventure 2, good or bad? Good. But only because the redeeming factors far outweigh the negatives, and the particular gripes I had about the game don't completely kill the experience for me. You win this round, Sonic fans, but I can't promise I'll be so merciful next time. Anyway, I'd like to thank you all for taking this journey with me, as well as watching this video to begin with. It means the world to me, and I'm so glad to be back and making content again. Hopefully this time it actually lasts. One last time, thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you all in my next video.